Welcome, everybody, to the Building Business Room, where we are having a live recorded podcast. I believe this is our fourth week that we're doing this, Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And today we are so fortunate to have special guest Anna Nesterova, who is president and founder of AVA Medical. Do you say AVA, Anna, or do you say AVA?
I say AVA.
Oh, dear.
AVA sounds good too. Yeah, I say AVA. Yep.
All right. Well, there you go. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Sinclair. I am president and founder of Sinclair Range. I am a investor, entrepreneur. Mostly what I do is buy and advise troubled businesses and help those troubled businesses survive, turn around, create value, and save jobs. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and including my fellow moderators and hosts here. I have David Cohen with us and Sam Silverstein with us. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself if you're good to have your mic off?
Sam or David?
Either one. David, go for it. I think Sam is otherwise occupied at the moment.
Sure. Hi, it's David Cohen. I'm a partner at Gowling WLG in Toronto. Gowling WLG is a global law firm with 19 offices around the world. Excuse me. I practiced in restructuring and insolvency for 32 years, according to my LinkedIn profile. And I am former chair of the Turnaround Management Association and president of the Turnaround Management Association, the world's largest organization bringing restructuring professionals together to share ideas and network. And I am at heart born and bred to be a part of the entrepreneurial community. I've run my practice for 32 years like an entrepreneur, and I actually have outside business interests. So the stories of entrepreneurs and how entrepreneurs succeed and how you build business is a story incredibly close to my heart. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, David. Sam, are you good to go? There you are.
There, yeah, it just wasn't, I was talking, but it wasn't working. My name is Sam Silverstein, and I am the author of 11 books on the topic of accountability and organizational culture. I work with leaders to help build accountable leadership and build organization cultures that inspire accountability and allow people to be their very best.
Thank you, Sam. And Anna, I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself because that will actually be the first part of our podcast. Since with you, what we're doing today, I really want to focus on your journey as opposed to, when we did shows with David and myself and Sam, we talked about accountability, we talked about negotiation technique and skills, we talked about turnaround. For you, what I'm most amazed by is your journey. And so we're going to get into that. But before we do, I remind everybody to refresh your screens, hit some plus buttons, and invite people that you think may enjoy this room. Please follow your moderators. Follow David, Anna, and Sam. Thank them for spending their time here. And remember, this is a live recorded podcast. Feel free to raise your hand, jump on stage, ask some questions of Anna, jump into the conversation. But when you do, remember that this is recorded and will show up on other platforms, specifically mine, Martinis with Scott on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, but also Sam or David may, and Anna, I'm certain, maybe on her YouTube channel, may be releasing this as well. So just know that if you raise your hand and get on stage, you will be recorded. All right, Anna, if we can start in. So I spent some time this afternoon looking through your CV and reminding myself, even though I've known you, maybe 3 years now, 4 years, something like that. Yeah. So were you born in Uzbekistan? Is that correct? I don't want to go right back to when you were born, but my point being that you grew up in Uzbekistan, right? And
Yes.
And for 4.5 years, you were studying to be in university to be a medical doctor. How long is that program?
Yes. Correct. So it's a 6-year program.
6 years.
And I finished almost 5 of them.
Right.
So out of 6 years. So I was about to graduate with MD.
Right. So you were 1.5 years away from being graduated to be a medical doctor. You would have had to done your internship and all that stuff, but basically well on your way. Well on your way to being a doctor and being set for life. And then in 2010, you immigrated to Canada from Uzbekistan, I assume with your family, and you landed in the roaring metropolitan area of Red Deer, Alberta, which if you haven't been there, oh my goodness. I spent a decade of my life there, 1 3-year period. It was it was something else. So you went to, and so you needed a summer job, is my guess. And so from May to August, what did you do? But you drove what we would call yellow iron here, a rock truck in a mine site. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. And road constructions and developments, yes. Yeah. I was the heavy equipment operator because that was the only job I could land at that time as a brand new immigrant in Canada. And I guess a good thing to remind that I immigrated because of my family. I never planned to, because my plan was to become a doctor, actually get my internship, etc. But due to certain rules that are in place, and they were placed by Canadian government, I could only use my chance to immigrate as a part of my family within a very short period of time. So I had to make a decision to immigrate within 2 months. So I had to pack my stuff, give up my school and everything, and just move, because it was the only time and the only opportunity for me due to my age and other circumstances, that, again, Canadian rules. And this is how I ended up in Red Deer. And yeah, I could not land any job. And the first job that actually was offered to me was the heavy equipment operator.
Okay.
Which I took.
And God bless you for that.
It was a huge change. It was a huge change considering that I grew up in a capital city, 3.5 million, very, big city girl, never saw equipment like that in my entire life. So,
right. And so David and I are Canadians, but for you city dwellers that have never seen the big equipment of a mine site, this is not a big pickup truck. This is huge pieces of equipment. And so, all right. So then in 2010, and the reason I'm going through so much detail in your CV is I just love the attitude. I love your entrepreneurialism and your hard work and your never give up. And I want to talk about, the journey being dropping out of medical school at the last minute and turning into an entrepreneur and the excitement and hardships of all that. So in 2010, you go to University of Calgary and you knock out a Bachelor of Kinesiology in 2 years, which I'm betting is a regular 3 to 4 year program. Correct?
Yeah, it is a 4-year program, but I was able to, do it in 2 years.
2 years. And then you roll right into a Master's of Biomedical Technology in what appears to be a year, probably 3 semesters, which I'm betting is a 4-semester course. Am I right?
Yeah, it is about a 3-semester course. All in all, it's a relatively short program, but a very condensed business/science program.
Okay. And so you end up with a Master's of Biomedical Technology. And during that, you do a project on the novel approach for treatment of, I can't even say this word.
Atherosclerosis.
Yeah, atherosclerosis. Excuse me, where you propose you come up with novel drug to prevent severe outcomes. You do a startup business case. You conduct market research in the biotechnology sector. You identify potential licensings for this new technology you've come up with, and you win, or at least you place in the best business pitch on this project. So, academically speaking, that seems to be the beginning of your entrepreneurial career, although I would suggest driving a rock truck might qualify. So then you roll into a sales job at Johnson & Johnson, okay, where you start knocking it out of the park as a sales representative. And what I love about this is not pharmaceutical sales. This is complicated medical equipment sales, and you're selling to neurosurgeons, literally, and interventional neuroradiologists. Correct? So it's a complicated sell, is my point. Okay, and it's not it's a sophisticated, what's the right word? Soft sell? Is that the right word? It's a, yeah, okay.
I'd say so, yeah.
So you're knocking it out of the park. You're blowing away your budget. You launch a number of products. Not that you launch them, but the Johnson & Johnson launches a number of products, and you're involved in the product launch from a sales side, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You win awards for sales at Johnson &
Yep.
Johnson. And in 2015, you leave to start what we're now calling Biomedical. And tell us what that is, please. I have it here, but maybe they'd like to hear your voice since it is you are the guest.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So I'll just go back a little bit back into my master's studies. I think that was the turning point. That was the pivot for me, because before that point, I was actually aiming to become a doctor. So I tried to apply to medical school, and again, Canadian rules were a bit cruel towards me in the sense that they did not consider enough experience in Canada as they didn't consider me as a eligible candidate to apply for medical school, which was very heartbreaking for me. But during my master's program, I realized that I do enjoy the path of having an idea and commercialize it and find the market for it, find the way how to fund it, how to bring it to the market, how to bring it to investors. And this is how it all started. And I chose the sales and marketing route as an opportunity for me to get into business and to get it right there, being in front of a customer and see how the whole process works. Because I think sales is one of those areas where you get to know the end users, the customers, you get to know the dynamics between the company and the end user and how it all works. So it actually was a strategic move, and I really wanted to get in, obviously, into something more technical, something more medical, because I wanted to be close to medicine as much as possible, just due to my own passion and just what I wanted to do before. That's how it all started. And yeah, in 2015, the opportunity actually showed up. It was just, I think it was just the timing. I got an opportunity to sign the direct contract with Johnson & Johnson and to become their representative, but not as an employee, but like an agent in my territory. And this is how it all started, because as soon as you become that independent agent, you actually have an option to sign up more clients. It's how I started looking for other companies if they would like to work with me and if they would like me to represent them in my territory, because I already built some network of people that I know, and that's how it all started. And a few companies came to me by accident or through just LinkedIn connections, and I think after that, just some companies, based on what I've done, they've heard about it and they started approaching me. And yeah, so Biomedical is the sales agency that represents companies, large or small, in the surgical space. So we sell the mostly surgical equipment, quite, I would say, niche and specialized. But in the last, 6 years now, I also had a chance to work with a couple of startups and smaller companies here locally in Alberta, and I just helped them to bring product to the market, because I find that small companies, they do have great teams of researchers and manufacturing, but they do not have resources or even a strategy sometimes for sales. So they need someone like me to get in and say, okay, let's go and talk to the end users. Let's go and talk to them and see if they have interest in using the product that they're developing, and what is lacking, what needs to be added, is it even a viable product? So that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years.
And because you don't have enough to do, you also became an advisor to what appears to be an investment banking type group, so a biotech consultant. You started your MBA in Edinburgh.
Yep.
You've been president of the Toastmasters Club in your area for 3-4 years, correct?
Yep. Yes.
Toastmasters is where you learn how to give speeches, correct? Is that not learned? But,
yes, it is. It is, yeah.
And you're president of that organization. I'm told that one of the things that is taught in the Toastmasters is that you always have a canned story in case you're put on the spot to give a speech. Is that true?
Somewhat true. It's just, I think they develop the skills for impromptu speaking. So you should be able to answer any questions at any time.
Okay.
So you don't have to really have a story, but skills just to have a few points, to come up with a few points regardless of the topic. That's what they teach, really.
All right. Developing, you've got a certificate in developing from somewhere, I think from Maryland, developing innovative ideas for new companies, certificate in project management. You're volunteering a bunch, and you've done 10 solo skydiving jumps in a military training setting.
Yes. Yeah, you did a good research on that.
Thank you.
Skydiving was actually a long time ago. I was actually 16 because in Uzbekistan and during that time it was still possible to do solo jumps at the age of 16.
They just throw you out of a plane. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it kind of gives you that strength, but after that you believe you can do anything, really.
You started a YouTube channel. I'm not sure how long that's been going on, and you've been a regular in this room. That's everything I got. Did I miss anything significant?
No, actually, no, I think it's pretty extensive. I would just only add that with the YouTube channel, which I started last summer, I've also started working on a platform. It's an educational platform for people who are trying to get into medical sales. So it's like a boot camp, like medical sales boot camp for people who want to learn about Canadian medical device industry, because I found that there was a bit of a gap between people who are trying to get in and not knowing what to expect, and companies who expect so much from candidates. Because I went through that path myself when I was looking for a job, when companies would come to you and say, oh, we want you to have almost like 10 years of experience and knowing everything. And you can't really, because after graduating at university, you can't really know much about medical device industry. It's not something that you being taught enough. So I decided to create a platform for people who'd like to learn and see what it's all about in Canada, so specifically for Canadian market. And yeah, I'm excited to work on that right now. So that's in progress.
Cool. And I guess the last thing I should have mentioned is that you're on Instagram this morning with an electric guitar rocking out Nirvana, I think,
Yeah.
of all things.
Yeah, it was Metallic, I believe. But yeah.
Was it Metallic? I'm too old to know the Nirvana.
Yeah. Both. But thanks, God. You did great research.
So, David, are you feeling inadequate yet?
Utterly. And how old are you at 12?
Yeah, 12 and a half.
Because, by the time I was 13, I had done all that. Actually, I want to fast forward a little bit. Scott, I don't know if you've got a rhythm here that I'm interrupting, but
doesn't matter.
I sort of look at this and I go, my God, so you come here, you abandon a medical degree, you have Jewish grandmother, she's rolled over in her grave, or your great-grandparents, your Jewish great-grandparents, which I don't think you have, but anyway, they've all rolled over in their grave because you gave up the wonderful medical career that everybody wishes their child would undertake. And I won't ask you what your parents thought of you doing that, and then you come to Canada, you go through the process, you get this great job, and then all of a sudden you quit that job because, not enough change is not good for you. You quit that job and you start a company, right? So I'd like to know what went through your mind about, just making the decision to go out and create your own business around this. What was it that you woke up one day and said, I can do this better by myself, I can do something different by myself, or there's I want to be my own boss? What was the motivator? Because a lot of people, wonder that's the entrepreneurial spirit right there. So what was it for you?
You know what, I think I learned over time that it's just part of my character, to be honest, which I didn't know until I started doing it, because I think I function at my best when I have things under my control and I set up my own schedule. I know who I want to see tomorrow, who I want to talk tomorrow, and I think being independent gave me that freedom. And again, I didn't know about it until that opportunity showed up. And I remember when Jocelyn Johnson asked me if I would like to sign up as an independent agent. Obviously it was risky, but I measured all the risks and I was okay. I know the product. I want to try it. I want to see it. But then when I started working with other companies, I started learning more and more that I like the idea of being flexible. I like the idea of control of my own enterprise, I guess. And I just think running a business, it's a journey on its own. There's so many components that I keep learning every day, and it's challenging, but it's so rewarding at the same time, because if something goes well, you know that you did something right, and there's so many components you have to consider. And I know that this is what I tell to people when they ask me about it. If they ask me about what would you choose, to work for a large company like Johnson & Johnson or do it on your own, I don't know, because some people would like to work for a large company because there's so many benefits of it, because those companies are amazing. They have great management, they have great benefits, etc. But when you're running your own business, I find it's so rewarding to learn about finances, learning about accounting, learning about investments, learning about hiring, HR. Like, I had to hire people for the first time in my life on my own. For my agency, that was another process. I had to go and study and learn and see, and of course you learn sometimes hard way, sometimes a good way. But I just, for me personally, it's just a good environment to be in. I actually strive in this environment because knowing that I'm in charge of something that can grow and develop and seeing the growth year to year, it gives me a big pleasure. That's how I see it.
And if I can, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and like all good children of entrepreneurs, I went and got a professional degree and followed a profession. But in my sense of entrepreneurs, and tell me if I'm wrong for this about you, is that while they can calculate the risk and assess the risk of going on their own, equally they don't feel the risk the same way others might.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you think you have, like, it's jumping out of the airplane. The first time you do it, it's hard. The second time, maybe it's a little easier. But you got to have some optimism in your heart jumping out of an aircraft or starting a business, because you got to believe that the technical skills that you acquired will get you on the ground safely. So I mean, people ask us, one of the biggest barriers to individuals, and so I think Sam can comment on this, one of the biggest barriers to individual success is actually defeating oneself before you start.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you felt about that risk when you took it.
Yeah, I actually, all my life, I thought I'm not a really risky person. I thought I'm avoiding risks, but I actually was not right about it. And again, it comes to light while you're doing things, because I do agree when I talk to people, and people would look at me and they would say, Anna, you're crazy, you would be so much safer, you would just go and work for a large company. And I agree with that. There are so many perks that come with it, and so many people like that. And yeah, I know why they're making those choices. It's just, for me, while I was learning so much running my agency, I just thought that for the benefit, it would never would compete any type of comfort that you get from a large company. So at least I'm going to try. That was my line of thinking. And yes, I do think now that I am much more risky than I thought I was, because I think it is a risk when you go on your own. It is a risk when you don't have a set up salary, for example, and you have to pay yourself, and you only rely on commission from the sale. So I think for many people, just that notion that you're not going to know what you're going to make next month, right, unless you sell, it's a big risk, and many people would not take it. But for me, I think as I was going, I thought, like, why not? I will work on it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you don't get it, sometimes you do, but it's just the process was much more rewarding. That's how I saw it.
Sam, I see you're unmuted there. Jump in.
Sure. You know what? I sense that there's a couple of things going here. One, you're incredibly focused, and where the head goes, the body flows. I mean, if you're driving a car and you're looking around, you swerve all over the place, because you look to the left, you steer to the left. You look to the right, you steer to the right. And so in a car, you got to know, are you a looker or are you a driver? And you're focused on what it is you're trying to do. But you're not only are you hyper focused, and is that working for you incredibly well, but you're an adrenaline junkie, but not the typical adrenaline of jumping out of a plane, which you're plenty comfortable with doing. It's the adrenaline of challenges, of the degrees of business, of you're not focused on the risk, you're focused on the results you want to achieve, and you thrive in the moment of those challenges rather than getting shut down. So you're able to take on things that maybe others wouldn't be able to and turn them into masterful successes. And I see that as an incredibly powerful place to be coming from, because there's nothing you can't take on.
Thank you, Sam. But one thing I wanted to share, and it's what I tell people when they ask me about it, that business, while you are going through business and it's a journey and you're learning, it just gives you so many other opportunities to learn so much outside of what you do. So let's say Biomedical is a sales company for medical devices. Obviously, it's a never-ending learning curve because there's so many different technologies out there, and you just learn, especially new companies are coming out with new machines, and you need to learn about them. But I think just the business component of it led me to go and expand so much outside of just that sales business. Is how I started consulting for the investors relations company, because I was just curious about the funds and investment and financial side of startups, or even scale-up companies. And then similarly, you have to go and learn something about accounting, because it's just running a business. You need to know some basics. You need to know more about project management. So things like that. And I think business in general gives you that much more, what would be a word to say, like much more wholesome overview of what you're doing, rather than just one specific area of expertise. And I really like that. And it's what I suggest to people if they ever ask me, why do you go into a business route versus, being employed? I think that's what I usually tell them.
So what's the most important aspect of a business for you that you need to nail, you need to get it right early on, that's going to put you on that success trajectory?
What's the most important goal? I don't know. I think in my business, I think just the nature of my business, I think the customer retention, customer satisfaction, customer service, to be honest. I think that's something I care deeply about. And obviously, the more customers are staying loyal and I can stay connected with them, the better for my business. And I see it as a sign of good work that I do. But there are so many other components. Of course, you have to bring revenue, you have to be profitable, you have to, in my opinion, I need to diversify the product portfolio, etc. So there are multiple components, but I think customer service is number one, just because of the nature of my business.
Okay, just a reminder to everybody, this is the Building Business Room, and we are doing a live podcast with entrepreneur Anna Nesterova, where we're talking about Anna's journey from the Eastern Bloc, if that's the right word, to immigrating to Canada, changing her dream. Everybody, please refresh your screen, hit the plus button, get some entrepreneurs in here and others that might like to hear this story. Anna, I've been known in my career to really like hiring Eastern Europeans, Eastern Bloc. I don't know if I'm too old, if that's still the right mindset. Still the right phrase. But people from that part of the world, because I found you get to combine in an individual really just an amazing education with a spirit of self-reliance, hustle, street smarts, just generally able to figure stuff out. And I just love that in an employee. So my question is, how did your family life and cultural upbringing from where you're from impact you being an entrepreneur today, if at all?
That's a great question. I think, both of my parents are doctors. So my future as a doctor was quite predictable, I guess. And I think medicine was always the focus in the family, and I was always genuinely interested in it. But in terms of entrepreneurship and business, I never had a chance to learn it, to be honest. I never had a chance, a real life example next to me, which potentially, sometimes I think potentially could have speeded up my own discovery of what I like and why I like business. But on the other hand, I realized, and I thought about it just recently, I always had a side hustle all my life. Even I think in the age of 10 or 12, I started selling some handmade needle holders at a market. And then I started selling some postcards for, let's say, Mother's Day or Valentine's Day. So I always had a bit of a...
That's amazing.
I always had a desire to have my own money, make my money. And my parents never restricted me in anything. So it was always like, okay, that's my new thing. I'm going to do it. And I think half the time my parents didn't even know because they were so busy. And as you know, the time when I was growing up was very tough because I was post-Soviet time. And obviously my parents, they had to provide. And my mom... my dad passed away, and my mom had to be a single mom with 2 kids. So not that she really had a chance to I would not say control, but somehow participate. She was participating, I guess, just by her own example, working hard. But I always had a bit of a side hustle. Like I was always working. I think, since age of 10, I think that was my first one when I was making some handmade stuff and selling on the market. So that was definitely first, maybe some sort of a sign, but I never got exposed. I didn't have a chance to be exposed to business, real business, until I was already in Canada and until I got into the real job, let's call it this way, with Johnson & Johnson.
Anna, do you think it was resilience? Do you think that you learned, or your just your circumstances led you to be one of those resilient people who will stick to something against the odds and who will follow something through and fight for the success of the victory on the other side? Because resilience is certainly, in terms of what, if you asked me to quantify what makes a really successful person is, surviving the attrition alone is a big part of it. And resilience is a big part of surviving the attrition. Do you feel you have that? Is that what drives you? Is a sense of never being pushed back on it?
Well, I hope so. I hope it does. Well, just an example, I think, with the rock truck, the one that is Scott. I remember your first reaction when I told you that for the first time a few years ago. You were quite shocked by it, because I think that was partially, that probably was a sign of resilience, because I really didn't want to work as a rock truck operator, and I actually was crying for the first few days. Every day coming back home, I was crying, and I was so upset about it. And my parents were saying, okay, maybe you should give up and look for something else. But because I knew I needed to earn money and I needed to move to Calgary, I needed to go to university, I just couldn't say no. I was like, nope, I'm going to do it. I'll prove it. I will. I need it. So I think, yes, most likely that's like the sign of resilience. It's really hard to say, really hard to talk about myself, really, but I think that was one of those examples where, I felt that I need to do it no matter what, because there's no other option. There's no other place or person I can rely on, really, so I had to do it. And I have no regret.
One of my sons refers to it as stick-to-itiveness. Right?
But David, I think in this situation it's way more than that. That's why I was so. If you ever meet Anna, and you were to make a top 10 list of things that you thought she would be doing, rock truck driver would be way down on that list. And it's really, to me, it's the emotional side of what I suspect. Being a young girl, you have 2 parents that are both doctors, and she wants to be a doctor and is basically there. And then not only stick-to-itness, David, not only resilience, but overcoming. That just must have been such a shock for you, Anna, and culturally as well.
Yeah, very much so. It was a tough time. I'm not going to lie. It was very hard culturally, just the language. And of course, as you can imagine, working construction was a very different language from what I knew before, because I spoke English before, but yeah, never the English that people speak in a construction area. And being a female, being a young female, being Russian, it was all people were picking on it, and just dealing with that, it was quite an interesting experience. But I also think I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason, because it gave me so much strength down the road. And even dealing with people right now in business, I think it gives me a bit more confidence, because once you've done that, and I think that was much harder at the time emotionally, it's much easier now to deal with some challenges and some hard times.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use the words "everything happens for a reason," because I would tell you that the majority of people would say everything happens to me and drives me down, and that's why I don't succeed, as opposed to you saying everything happens for a reason and therefore I succeed. There's a real difference in tonality to that, right? Like, in that distinction, I mean, I get to see a lot of success and I get to see a lot of failure in my career. I've had my own share of it myself, and this attitude that, everything happens for a reason, it makes me a tougher, better person. That's actually more rare than you know, Anna. Is what I'm saying. And it is an attribute. It is an attribute in really, truly successful people, because if you spend all of your life dwelling on what could have been instead of focusing on what can be and what you want it to be, I think it's like having, I describe it as having a bag of rocks on your back. If you can empty the rocks out of the bag, you can walk upright and with a lot more pride and a lot more confidence.
Thank you, David.
There's a power in thinking the universe is out to get you. The difference between that and thinking that the universe is out for you. And so what I'm hearing is you see the universe is out for you and that things are happening for a reason. And then if doors close, that's okay. Another one opens and that's the one you walk through. Am I correct? That's how you see it?
Yes, definitely. And I know it's very hard to see it in a moment, and when you go through a tough time, and it's sometimes it's very hard to see that, but I always know that even what's happening right now eventually will lead you somewhere, and you just don't know why it is happening, but it's your job, obviously, to figure out eventually. But I usually tell people that no matter what happens, it happens for a reason. Even something very challenging, something tough, something unexpected, you will learn the lesson in the future, and you will look back and you will understand why it was given to you, either an opportunity or maybe it was a failure that was in your way or some sort of a challenge. And that's how I saw that experience for myself. It was just I had to prove to myself that I can do it, and maybe in the hardest way possible, especially changing countries, changing cultures, changing education, changing everything, going through that tough period of time and overcoming it, and actually doing it quite, I would say, successfully, considering the time frame and what I was doing and how quick I had to learn and how I had to adjust my communication to people who were working with me at the time. And obviously some of them were nice to me, some of them were not. But overcoming that later on gave me so much strength, because potentially without having that experience, I wouldn't be as strong or maybe as confident in other situations. Again, considering my circumstances, changing the country, changing the culture, changing everything, education, etc.
So it's interesting because I wouldn't describe myself as a deeply faithful person, or even a person who believes in fate, or even believes that the universe is either for you or not. I think it's organic, and as a consequence, maybe I don't buy into the concept of a universe being out, to help you. But I am a deep believer in that you help yourself, and that everything is a learning opportunity, and everything is an opportunity to shine, and people are not judged by how well they do something the first time. It's how they pick themselves up and recover from a setback that defines them. And the people that you see have the greatest success are the ones that have the capacity to just pick themselves up and learn from what they've done and make themselves better with each and every challenge. Maybe I don't agree with others about the universe being some like animate creature. I just think there are kinds of people who know how to take what they're given and make it into gold. And there are other kinds of people who carry it on their back like a bag of rocks. And so I mean, that's a lesson for every entrepreneur, right? Don't let the rocks pile up in the bag. And no joke, you carried around rocks for a while in your truck. But you're not a person who carries the rocks in the bag. But you remember exactly how heavy they were and exactly how hard they were to lift, and you remember what you did to get them out of the bag. And that's really impressive, to be honest.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to everybody, this is a live recorded podcast. Amara, Scott, Lisa, Diamond, Corey, you want to raise your hand, jump on stage, participate, and ask Anna some questions or throw your thoughts out for Anna. Please feel free to do so. Anna, I asked you in preparation for this to send me, 5 words or however many words you felt like sending that would sort of symbolize how you succeed, and you sent out to me optimism with a note of realism, responsibility, persistence / determination, not blaming anyone, open-minded, and adventurous. That was your list that you sent to me. I love optimism with a note of realism. One of my themes is positivity. And Corey, thanks for jumping on the stage. We're going to get you after this segment, unless you want to jump in on this specific segment. And Corey is also a sales guru, and so you'll have some commonality there. So optimism with a note of realism. I always talk about positivity. I see that as sort of the same thing. Can you expand on that and how it's impacted your success as both in sales and as an entrepreneur and everything you've accomplished at such a young age?
The optimism, I think it's a required quality that everyone needs to have in order to achieve anything, to be honest. Because I think if you have a pessimistic outlook, I don't know if you can really progress. That's just very simple, in my opinion. But I added the note of realism because I think, and I met people, very optimistic people, but they're a little bit overly optimistic, where I think in business and in real life, and actually in everything, even in relationships and friendship, etc., the really optimistic people sometimes can be crushed by the reality, and by the reality of, I don't know, again, challenges that they can see along the way, or just some events that are happening, and you have to look at them with a bit of a realistic lens rather than just optimistic only. For me, I think optimism definitely helped me with my career and with my agency right now, because I think I was always optimistic by signing up a new contract, a new company. Let's say the company has no sales and no record, and it's a brand new thing, and you have no idea if it's going to go or not go. But optimism and belief that you can succeed, or at least you're going to try, definitely helped me. So I never said no, and I never had doubts. I always yeah, let's try it. Let's move on with it. Let's do the best, and we'll see how it's going to go. But realism obviously kicks in when, let's say, something doesn't go well, and you analyze why, and you can see that there are certain conditions, certain circumstances. You have to look at them realistically and assess your risks and assess your rewards, and maybe make business decisions according to those realistic outlooks. So that would be my short description why I value optimism, but with a little bit of note of realism, because being only optimistic sometimes can hurt you in the long run. Amazing,
thank you. Corey, you want to jump in on this? And just a reminder, Corey, this is a recorded podcast. It will be rebroadcast, certainly on Martinis with Scott, and other people will pick it up as well, I'm sure. So just to give you a heads up on that, make sure you're comfortable.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott, and Anna, and David, Sam. Really appreciate you bringing me up. Anna, I thought for a second on that last thing that you said. I didn't know how much emphasis you were going to put on the realism portion of the optimism conversation, because I try to always be optimistic. However, I heard something recently that said optimistic people, I'm
trying to remember exactly what they said, but essentially they said that is, by default, not the best thing because people will believe in something that's not really real. Oh, I know what it was. They said, oh, yeah, I'm going to close this big deal, and they've not even had a conversation with the person because they're, air quotes, optimistic about closing the deal. And I think that kills a lot of deals as well as helps them grow, right? And look, to be honest, I would much prefer somebody be optimistic than pessimistic for sure. But Anna, what do you guys think about that? Have you heard that? Have you experienced that? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yes, thanks, Corey. Yeah, definitely. I think, and especially in sales, as you know, you have to stay optimistic, and you probably have to, well, maybe even oversell sometimes. But I think the reality kicks in no matter what, and it's important to understand the realistic outcomes out of the deal, because being overly optimistic sometimes leads to false promises, and that's my biggest, my biggest pet peeve in a way, that false promises. And when people say, oh yeah, we're going to do this, we forecast, I don't know, $1 million deal out of this. Well, realistically speaking, based on the volume of, let's say, surgeries in the hospital, or the level of interest of the end user, it's not going to be $1 million. So then it's a false promising, overly optimistic forecast, and then you obviously see the if you go ahead with it, obviously you will be very crushed by not achieving that. So I try to stay balanced that way. I really try, because I have to stay optimistic. I need to believe that I will succeed. I need to believe that we will get to the best outcome possible. But realistically speaking, do I have some metrics and real life metrics and numbers maybe that will prove my optimistic outlook, or they actually will disprove, and I need to be careful, and maybe I need to have plan B, or maybe re-strategize my actions.
Yeah, I agree, Anna. Because look, if you overpromise and underdeliver, well, let's just be honest, you're going to lose a client. And so I try to never overpromise and underdeliver. I try to do the opposite. Yeah. I try to overdeliver, and underpromise, because ultimately I want whoever it is I'm working with, I want them to love the experience that they have with me. And I think we can all agree that if I overpromise and don't deliver, they're not going to be happy, right?
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're 100% right. But I also want to add just one thing, because the nature of the business I'm in, so it's also healthcare related, medicine related, and eventually it is related to people's health. And I'm deeply, deeply passionate, and also I'm deeply concerned about it, because it's not the same to sell, I'm trying to think of, construction material maybe versus medical equipment, high-level medical equipment. You don't want to overpromise. You don't want to have that burden after that you've sold something or you've promised something you cannot deliver on, because I think it actually evokes a chain of events that will potentially lead to some, I wouldn't say harm, but at least it may change lives and it may influence lives, and I take that very seriously.
So, Anna, I think... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Craig, go ahead, please.
I was gonna lob something back, because you mentioned the medical industry, and Anna, I hadn't had an opportunity to look at your profile, so I didn't know that medical device is what we're talking about. But let me shift gears just for a quick second. What about a doctor? I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and this kid that had brain cancer, some kind of rare form of brain cancer, the doctor came in and said, "Hey, there's no hope. We have zero hope. There's nothing we can do. Basically, just live the best life you can for as long as you can. It's probably not going to be very long." I feel like in that scenario, it makes more sense for the doctor to be more optimistic, because I believe that if you're optimistic in a situation like that, I believe that you will live longer. And I truly, truly, truly believe that.
It's a tough one. I think it depends on education of that particular doctor, because there are two schools of thought, actually, I'm thinking, in medicine, where you are very realistic and you tell the patient the blunt truth. And there is another one where you try to soften up the edges and you try to hope for that optimistic approach, because I do agree there is evidence when people think optimistically, the ill people, they have optimism and they believe that they can do better or they can live a happy life. They on average live longer than people who just give up and they know that it's come, that let's say, the end of life is coming, so they just give up. But it's hard to say because doctors make that decision, and I also think.
Well, there's a healthy dose, Anna, of risk mitigation in that decision, right?
Exactly. So
that's the big deal there, and the litigation that comes with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. David, did you want to just quickly jump in on that point?
Well, on that point, it's hard to argue with them. I don't think doctors are in the hope business necessarily. They're scientists at heart. And that's why people, generally speaking, they get a bad rap, right? They get a bad rap because they have to be pragmatic about things. But, doctors miss stuff too. They miss opportunities to solve problems. And optimism, in part, drives the patient to go and look for alternative solutions and to go to alternative treatments or to a different doctor that results in potentially a longer life or a better result. It may not, but sometimes just the journey is important to people to do that. So, the doctors aren't selling anything. They're providing a real scientific. It's really hard to fault a doctor who's very honest with somebody, I think, and I don't think that's. I think that's the toughest sales job on the planet, if you ask me.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's just a harder thing to sell, right? Because it's there's absolutely an incredible risk mitigation exercise there. And when was the last time you and I dealt with life or death, Scott? It's awfully easy for us to talk about selling optimism to patients, but we're not dealing with life and death.
Well, not personally, but I just dealt with this, as recently as 3 months ago, as you know, and so I have pretty strong views about it. Sam, I'm going to, as we kind of head to the end here, I'm going to read you these words that Anna had sent to me again, which she believes to be the heart of her success, and I want to know from you, Sam, what speaks to you. As an author, I don't want to say coach, trainer, whatever the right word is, on accountability and business and life success. Which one of these speak to you, and maybe you could throw some out for us and the listeners of the podcast here, and for Anna. So, optimism with a note of realism, responsibility, persistence / determination, not blaming anyone, open-minded, adventurous.
Wow. Well, that's a complete set. It's hard to pull one out and focus on that. I see not blaming anyone is something important. It's valuing people. When you take those characteristics that you just mentioned and you combine that with the concept of valuing people. And I think that is expressed maybe in so many words, shall we say, and not blaming anyone else. We're not looking to put the blame on someone else. But when you value people and you live your life with those characteristics, then good things are going to happen because you're making them happen. Asking me to pick out one would be like asking me which of my 4 children do I love the most. That's not going to be something I really want to engage in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but optimism always, you started there. And I think when you're optimistic, you look for positive things. And to me, characteristics like abundance, gratitude, and respect are always going to flow from, you have to have an optimistic attitude to be able to get into those mindsets, and those mindsets are critical. So I just love what Anna shared with you. I think it's powerful, and it's a tribute to who she is.
Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead, Anna.
I just want to say thank you, Sam. I'm really honored to first of all, to get invited to this show and to talk to all of you and get to know you.
Thank you. The honor is mutual, and I look forward to exploring that even further over time.
Thank you.
Amr, am I saying that properly? I think so.
Yes, Scott. Yes. You're the only Canadian who says Amr.
The other ones all say
call
A.
me Amir.
Oh, Amir.
Like
Oh,
they
they say
told you.
Amir. And we're just a reminder that this is a recorded podcast, so that it will be aired separately on Martinis with Scott and other platforms, probably Anna's as well. So if you're okay with that, please unmute and ask your question of Anna, or throw out what you wanted to throw out.
First of all, this is Amr, and thank you for the invite. And it's what a beautiful, small, valuable room, and it does resonate with my journey and with my success story, being an entrepreneur and self-made. And Anna, I admire your achievement and your shift and what you went through. It's that's superior. And it takes a lot for somebody to keep going, and it takes a courage. So being born in Kuwait and moved to Canada when I was 19, after the Gulf War and all that, so I kept my mindset, I kept my heart in it, I kept my courage, and I don't want to elaborate on details, but I just want to be. Quick, because you're probably closing the room. But just to be an entrepreneur, it takes a lot. It's a decision. It's a gift. It's a passion, and it's an endless learning journey. And it's not gonna, sometimes you're gonna be under tough tests in life, whether changing or pivoting. During your journey, or maybe losing everything, or maybe going through health issues or whatever. But the trick is that you keep going, and the trick to keep going is your faith, and you believe that you can make that difference. Entrepreneurship is the ability to make a difference. It's the ability to bring something new to the market, or is changing something from A to B. It's the way you treat people. It's the way, at the moment of the trade, when you trade, the moment of that transaction, the value that I give you, the impact that I give you. That's, to me, that's how I evolve around the concept or the theory of being entrepreneur. And as a result, again, growing in Canada, proud Canadian. I obtained education, I obtained sport experience, I obtained life experience, wisdom, connection, opportunities. And guess what, Anna? You know what? One of the reasons I shared, or I want to jump in, I ended up with a physician, and my wife is a doctor, and amazing, and I took a different path in my life. Being a husband to a doctor, and putting my company on pending status for 3 years, because we had to move to St. Louis, Missouri, for her to continue her fellowship program and so on. So I'm proud that I was able to be that person and to support her. So to me, also, that's something that I never thought that I would be able to do, given the fact from my background, being single and all that. So I just want to celebrate this. I just want to enhance your journey, and there's a project that she want to consider to take snoring shops to the Middle East, or the sleep disturbance. And when you said about medical equipment and all that, I don't know if this is something you're familiar with, but there's probably a future collaboration with you, because we have this project. It's a huge project, but she doesn't have the entrepreneurship yet. But I'm the businessman in the relationship, So this is something that we are exploring, because again, this is where I'm from originally. So I want to also utilize my diversity, and my passion is to connect North America with the Middle East.
Let me interrupt
So
you,
this is
Amir.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. That was great. Thank you. We're at the top of the hour. Anna, you can respond to that. Sounds like you two guys should connect offline as well. But go ahead, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. Thanks, Amir. Thanks so much for all the work, everything that you shared in the story. And yeah, I'll be happy to connect outside of this platform and see and explore the opportunities. But just to maybe wrap up this and just to close the conversation, I just wanted to say that you never know where the roads will bring you. And sometimes no matter what background you have and where you end up to be, you just need to believe that things will work out, and you should not give up. And I think based on what Amir just shared, it is another example where if you do not give up and you believe you can achieve so much. And my last thing I wanted to share is just people in life. I cannot be more appreciative of people that I've met throughout my journey and since I moved to Canada. I think that is something that people need to consider, that meeting new people, appreciating every person along the way, that definitely makes a difference, because if you listen to them, if you try to find people that are on the same wave as you are, I think they just make you better, and you can learn so much. And I'm really grateful for all the people that I've met, including you guys. Thank you so much for having me today on your show.
Thank you, Anna. David, Sam, do you want to wrap up? Thank you both for co-moderating, and as usual.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you. It was a great conversation. It was not only inspirational, but gave us specific things to think about that we can step out as we take on challenges, start new businesses, and look to create success in our own organization. So thank you for a great conversation.
I just want to say thank you for sharing, Anna. It was there was a lot to be learned from the conversation, and I appreciate having the opportunity to ask you questions and just chat. So thank you.
Thank you. Really grateful for this.
All right, this has been the Building Business Room on Clubhouse, a live recorded podcast with Anna Nesterova. I don't know if I pronounced that properly, but I do my best. And I think that's it. We are signing off 2 minutes past due. Overtime. Thank you, everybody.